When designing a game, you may be aiming to capture a very specific feeling. Being able to catch that emotion takes a lot of hard work and dedication, and refining your product to the state that you're happy with. This week on Schedule for Launch, join me, Zach Walsh, as I talk with Adam about his catalog of games. From a game about ghosts committing theft to a garage sale for two, discover these incredible games and what they have to offer. We talk about bonds, emotional storytelling, and narrative. Welcome to Schedule for Launch, a podcast to discover the projects that you may have missed. This week, I am very excited to have Adam onto the show with us this week. Adam, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, I'm super happy to be here. I've listened to a few episodes of your show, and I'm really excited to talk about games.
You know, you're one of the people who I had seen stuff on before. I think I was following you on Twitter for a little while before you reached out to me, and I was going to reach out to you in the near future, and it just kind of kept on slipping. So I'm very excited that we get to have this conversation.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I've been following you on Twitter for a while, even if because I've met you. Well, because I saw you first through the Roll Plus Bond Discord, so I was like, this seems like an interesting person to be in touch with.
Audience, you caught that right. We're bringing in another person from Roll Plus Bond. They are a phenomenal group, so if you're interested in them, you should go check them out. They're all very, very sweet.
Yeah, it's been. I've been part of the community now for I think a year and a half now. That sounds about right. And I've met some of my closest friends through it. It's such a great, lovely community, not just for playing games, but for talking to people who write games, writing your own games, even if you don't wind up publishing, just being able to share a Google Doc in the server and be like, hey guys, what do you think of this? And just getting feedback is absolutely wonderful. I love it so much.
Yeah, and just chatting too. They're a very vocal bunch.
Absolutely.
Well, Adam, before we dive into some of the projects that you make, because we're going to be going over 3 of your games, and we're going to actually be getting a little sneak peek on something that you're working on, which I'm very excited about. And I only discovered, 10 minutes ago?
Something like that.
Yeah. Can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, my name is Adam. I use he, him pronouns. I am 27 years old. I live in Cleveland, Ohio. It's about as specific as we're going to get, so we'll leave it there. But I have been playing some version of tabletop role-playing games since 2014, starting as a lot of people nowadays do with Dungeons & Dragons. Actually, I started with Pathfinder, then went to Dungeons & Dragons. And then about a couple of years ago, I started branching off to other TTRPGs. One of my friends in a different server also writes games. And we played a game called Queer Heist Crew Multiverse Mashup, and that was just a ton of fun to play, and that kind of opened my eye to how much just the existence of other games. I also started listening to actual play podcasts like Friends at the Table, and just listening to people play other games and the stories they tell got huge interest. And then I helped some friends play test some games. I helped Adela, who I know has been on the show before, play test Hedge Witch Tales, Wisp, Beefay Do Crimes. And those play tests actually brought me into the Roll Plus Bond community to do some of those. And from there, it was just finding new people, playing new games. Oh, you're writing this new game? I want to play that. I want to try that. And just, it was just a deep, deep nosedive from there. So it's been, and that's just all happened over the last couple years. I never thought I'd be writing games, but the people I've surrounded myself with have just inspired me to, through either game jams or just dialogue, to write some really cool stuff.
And that's something I think I really appreciate about you and the community that's there. There isn't this huge pressure to make something so much as there is more to explore your ideas in some shape or form.
Yeah, and that is what's really cool is that like you can piggyback off people. There's a lot of times where someone will say like a single sentence and it's a silly sentence and someone's like, I'm gonna write a game about that, and then it never happens. Or someone says a silly sentence, you say, I'm gonna write a game about that, and then 2 months later they're publishing a game on itch about that one, like spun off of this one sentence. Um and it's a great place sometimes. There's game jams, and if there's a game jam going on, it's really fun to be able to bounce your ideas, see what other people are working on. How does yours synergize? How do yours differ? Weston, who's also been on the show, did a Halloween game jam in 2020, and that's when
Yeah.
I actually wrote my first game. And what's really funny about that is we were all joking around about the. So around that time, the video game Untitled Goose Game had just come out, or had come out pretty recently. Huge hit, great game, love it. So I was like, I'm going to name my game Untitled Ghost Game, and then another one of my friends also was like, I'm going to name my game Untitled Ghost Game. And I came to start talking about my game, and they'd already written their whole game and named it Untitled Ghost Game. And I'm like, I'm going to change my name because you're way ahead of where I am. And it fit their flavor a little bit better. But like it's just that kind of fun synergy going on. It's great.
Yeah, well, you actually brought up what is going to be the first game I wanted to talk about. And I'm pretty sure that's Poltergeist, isn't it?
Yes. So this is great because everyone asks me how do I pronounce this game because it's spelt Polter parentheses G close parentheses Heist. So I say poltergeist. Like it doesn't matter. Um, it's meant to look like the word poltergeist, but with the word heist at the end.
If you see the title, people, it's really that it's kind of obvious that that's the thing, but it's a lot of fun. I really like the look at it. It's based on one of my favorite one page tabletop role playing games, which is Honey Heist. So, and that's by Grant Howitt. Got a lot of popularity from being featured on Critical Role on like one of their best spin-off episodes, if you ask me.
Mm-hmm.
But can you tell us a little bit about what Poltergeist is and how it works?
Yeah, so as you said, it is a hack of Honey Heist by Grant Howitt. Big shout out to Grant Howitt. I actually asked him if I could use some of his specific categories for this game, and he said yes. He's just
Oh,
a
cool.
fantastic person. But the gist of the game is that you are a crew of ghosts, and you're out to commit the heist of your afterlives. It is a very straightforward, very simple game. It's technically 2 pages, but the game itself is on 1 page. The other, some of the other pages, some extra rollable tables. But you just randomly roll up a character for your ghost. You come up with different ghost type, your role in the actual heist, and then you can also roll for what your outfit is like. So kind of riffing off of how in Honey Heist you can wow, I words. Kind of like in Honey Heist, you can roll for your bear to have a hat. In Poltergeist, you actually roll for like a ghostly outfit. Were you a pirate? Were you from like Victorian times? And it's really fun. And again, just like in Honey Heist, the dice system is very simple. You just need to have a couple d6s to play. You start off with two different stats, which are I'm gonna forget them now, even though this is my game. Uh, actually, here's what I'm gonna do: is I'm gonna
Wrote
go
this game
open
in
the game so
2020.
I
It's
don't.
okay. It's
Yeah,
2 years
let me
ago.
just real quick. Where's the file? So the two stats that we have are spook and heist.
Okay.
The stats when you're rolling them. So you roll a d6, and whenever you're trying to commit a crime, you're trying to pick a lock. If you're trying to sneak around someone, then you're going to be rolling heist. You roll spook whenever you're doing anything related to being a ghost. And you change the amount of d6s depending on if you have something that is related to your role. So if you are the hacker and you're trying to possess a computer to hack it, then you can go ahead and roll 2d6 and take the best. Just like in Honey Heist as well, your stats will start at 3. On any success, doesn't matter what stat you roll, your heist will go to up by 1, say from 3 to 4, and your spook will go from 3 to 2. Any roll you fail at, it's the reverse. And what's great about these games is that while it's nice to increase one stat and decrease another, if you ever hit 6 into your stats, the game instantly ends as something horribly goes wrong. And it's just such a fantastic concept. And again, huge shout out to Grant Howitt for coming up with this game, because the premise is so straightforward and yet so flexible. It was so much fun to write a hack for it when so this was my first game I ever wrote. Again, I didn't think I'd ever be writing my own game. And so to be able to take this really straightforward, fun game and just kind of give it just a once over and replace the bears with ghosts was just a really fun thought project almost. Yeah. The game was released as part of Weston's Ghost to Ghost game jam for Halloween of 2020. And just being able to go over I play tested a couple times with people and just have some of the wackiest stories I've ever told. My favorite is in one of the play tests, my lovely players burnt down the Louvre.
Oh no! That's about as bad as it can go.
What's great, it was a successful heist. They just the thing is that the ultimately the little do the ghosts know the place was rigged to blow, and
That's so funny. Okay, so that was the first game you wrote, and then we're going to move on to the second game you wrote, which is my personal favorite, actually. And that's Sweet Peony. Can you tell us a little bit about Sweet Peony and what Sweet Peony is?
Yeah, so Sweet Peony is also my favorite. This also, shout out to Weston as well, because this was part of I can't remember the exact name of the jam. I think it was the January.
It was called
Sad Game Jam. Yeah. Which was really great. Because I just was hit with a random inspiration for this game, where I was just like, it was great because right around when this came up, I saw a random GIF from the movie Inside Out. Which, for anyone who's not familiar with Inside Out, it's a Pixar movie where you actually see the emotions inside of a person as like actual characters. And I got hit with the inspiration of, wow, life is kind of like ultimately divided up into multiple different emotions. Sometimes you feel some stronger than others. Wouldn't it be really cool if you could zoom in on those different points in time? And the game went through several different iterations. At first, it was going to be like, okay, I knew I wanted it to be a 2-player game. But at first I was like, okay, at first I thought it was going to be more like Inside Out. We're like, okay, we're going to have these actual like personifications of emotions, and they're going to be taking turns telling stories about this one person. But then the more I kind of wrote out the game, I realized that I wanted it to be more about the person that they're focusing on. The emotions are just part of your life, and so I wanted the emotions you feel to be part of it. And the way that the game ultimately winds up working is the two players co-create a character or an object. So it can be either a person, it could be an actual inanimate object. And then using a deck of cards, you play the game War. So the decks are split up into suits. Red suits go to one player, blue suits go to another. Each player embodies a different emotion of joy and sorrow. And you tell different vignettes of this person or object's life through any time frame you want. It could be a day in a life, a week in a life. It could be a year, a decade, a whole lifetime. And as you play the game War, whoever wins the card draw winds up narrating a quick vignette about this person's life, just framed by that emotion. And it's and again, I know I'm very biased, but what I really love about it is you can tell such varied stories in such a way that like is framed in a very realistic fashion, because joy doesn't always mean this is the happiest I've ever been in my life, and sorrow doesn't mean everything in my life is falling apart.
Yeah.
Sometimes joy is your character sat on a bench under a tree in the sun and had a really nice day, and sometimes sorrow is you forgot to bring your umbrella and started raining on you. But
Mm.
also, sometimes joys are like you got married, and sometimes sorrow is someone close to you passes away. And to be able to introduce those however you want is great. Um, and what's really cool too is one of my biggest concerns as well was kind of players having being able to have narrative control.
Yeah.
And in a game of war, even though everyone has the same number of cards, so everyone has two aces, two kings, two queens, so on, it's very possible your luck could be bad and you could just have like 5 or 6 losses in a row. So each player gets two jokers. If at any point you lose a draw, you can just play one of your jokers and you win the round. You narrate from your tail. And that does two things. One, if you haven't gotten a turn for a while, this gives you the control and it gives you the opportunity to be like, no, I want a turn now. Kind of balance
Yeah.
that out. But second, and I didn't realize this until I was playing this game with actually Weston. I'll come back to that in a second. It also can really help with if you have a narrative thread that you just really want to insert, just throw down the Joker and go for it. So the game I played with Weston, we told a tale of it was a cherry tree in a space station, and we told
Oh.
it over the period of like 300 years. And my one of my biggest regrets in life is that we did not record this game. It was one of the just like bittersweet, tragic games, as it was already. And right at the end, Weston just played their jokers just like in quick succession to like turn the narrative, twisting exactly where they wanted to go with it. And they were playing sorrow, so it was beautiful.
But that's also one of the things too. You mentioned bittersweet and melancholy moments, and you actually have some light rules for that. I think Sweet Peony is only about 6 pages long, and that's including assistance for creating a character. But
Right.
if you tie in a war in when you're playing the cards, you get a bittersweet or melancholy scene, and I think that's such good design. And part of that is co-narrating it.
Yeah. So one of my favorite. This is honestly one of my favorite parts of the game, and this is where you actually see a lot of inspiration from Inside Out. Is sometimes you feel emotions that are just complex emotions or multiple emotions that are being felt at once. Your emotions almost have to work together for you to feel what you have to feel. And for me, I wanted that to be represented in the game itself. When generally the game is meant to be played really quickly, your vignettes are only supposed to be a couple sentences, although you can spend as long as you want on them. But when there's a tie, I wanted players to kind of stop and think about how these emotions are going to blend. What does it mean to meet in the middle? How does it actually wind up presenting to your character or your object? And it slows the game down in a really nice way, in a really introspective way. And again, just some of my favorite scenes come from bittersweet uh, ties in the game. It's just a really fun co-collaboration part of the game.
It's also one of the only two-player role-playing games I've seen that arguably has like not you're trying to win, but whoever has the
Mm-hmm.
most cards at the end, they'll they get to narrate the final vignette.
Yeah, and so I wanted there to be some kind of ending to the game clearly. And I've
Hmm.
had it where it's like you can have make the game shorter by cutting the cards in half. You can make the game longer by using 2 decks of cards. Do whatever you want with that. But I wanted you to be able to both wrap the game off and be like, here's where we end, but also not have to be like, oh, we have to finish this character or object. And so I wanted this to be almost like a continuation of play. And the way that I decided to do that is just whoever won the most, you narrate one last vignette. And the way I specifically describe it is it's not necessarily a character ending, although it can be if you want it to be. Um, but it's really just ultimately the last emotion we see this character on. So even if the person who's playing Sorrow has the most cards, that doesn't mean that the rest of your character's life is going to be sad or ends in tragedy. It's just the last thing that we see them on is a sadder emotion, which happens in life.
Yeah.
And then same with Joy too. Sometimes we see them on this really this peak point of their life. And then if you wind up tying, you both won, then you narrate a melancholy one. And I think one of my favorite endings that was actually a Joy ending. I'm playing a series of games with a group of friends that take place in a fictional superhero city, and we've played a ton of games in this. And we did Sweet Peony for one of the characters, and we did it for their 4 years of college. And it was just experiencing, basically it was the game just about what their life was like going to college but also being a superhero in the superhero city. And the last Joy scene we ended was them and their college friends helping them move into their first apartment after college, and them just being on top of the roof, just drinking with their friends and just having a great time as the sun sets behind them. Nice, simple. This character's only like 22 years old, so clearly there's more to life for them, but that's just a nice, sweet ending that we had to the game.
That's super sweet. I'm glad that that got to be put out there because that sounds like a lot of fun. One of the most important things too in Sweet Peony specifically is that, and you stress it, which is great, the amount of safety mechanisms that are put in place for this one. So lines and veils and X card. Obviously, these can be some intense moments. Just making sure that they're addressed is really important.
Yeah, and what's really cool too, and what I'm going to go ahead and do now is because I didn't actually really know this about it, because when I wrote this game, I had I just been writing the game. I played with these tools before, but never learned them. So I do want to specifically shout out the X card is written by John Stavropoulos, and I think Lines and Veils. I was just looking this up. Is coined by Ron Edwards. So there are two people that specifically created these tools. It's for me. It's really safety tools are really really important to me. There's lots of reasons why you should always introduce safety tools in your games. And it's for the obvious reasons of you want to make sure people are always comfortable. You want to give people the control to be comfortable. You don't want anyone to be upset. Games are about having fun, ultimately, no matter what story you're telling. And you can't have fun if you are not safe. That's something I always stand by. And what you'll notice is that when you get really close with a group of people, you'll stop using a lot of like explicit safety tools and do more implicit ones, little check-ins. You know what your friends' kind of triggers are, and so you do your best to avoid them. You know what people don't like. But it's still important to incorporate some form of safety, because you don't know if someone's going through a bad time and something might not sit well with them. The world's a really scary place right now. There could be certain topics that weren't an issue last week that are now. Sure. I think one of the examples for me is I was playing with someone, and we had done Lines and Veils as we always do, but we didn't realize that they were afraid of mice. And so we didn't. I think I was actually playing Be Fay Do Crime by Adela, and that has I cannot remember the name of this character, but it's like the Pied is inspired by the Pied Piper, who can summon like hordes of animals. And they summoned a group of mice to help us with what we were doing, and they were like, "Nope, can't do that." And we were like, "All right, we're slamming on that reset button. We're going to do squirrels instead." Like, being able to have the tools to reset or pause or fast forward through something is so powerful and good. And I think that even if you're familiar with the people you're playing with, even if you're friends with them, even if you're close and you know each other, have something there, so that way if someone's ever uncomfortable, they have a good way of communicating it. Or if you already are good on the communication standpoint, you have the tools available to know how to maybe work around it, whether it's completely redoing the scene, fast forwarding through it. Safety tools are always important. And then to bring it back to Sweet Peony, this is a game very explicitly about strong emotions that can be positive
Yep.
or negative. Lots of things can cause these emotions. It's very easy to have lines and veils set up. You know what not to touch into. But if you're going to be going into a topic that you're like, hey, I think that this is going to be a little bit touchy, it's just really important to be like, hey, I want to do about a scene about this. What do you think of this? Or, hey, I think this scene might be heading in a negative direction. Do we want, or in a really bad direction? Do we want to shift it, or are we good with this? And just being able to have that open dialogue is one of the most important parts of playing a game with someone.
Over the last couple of years, definitely more so, even in the past year since I started scheduled for launch, I have seen such a heavy shift towards making sure that those tools are well explained and accessible. And I think we're going to keep on seeing more of that. I'm really glad to see it because while there's not a whole lot that is triggering for me, and a lot of the times I'll use role playing games to explore topics that I want to know more about myself with, be they positive or negative. I think it's so important to have the option there and to have it explicitly stated. So kudos for putting this in there.
Yeah, and it's again one of those things that, like, especially so I wrote this game in the game jam was January 2021, but I didn't release it till February of 21. And that was even just like, I knew this was important, let's do it. But even since writing this, for me, just being able to even just know, just for me, if I can tell someone's uncomfortable, it takes me out of playing the game too.
Yeah.
And I think that people don't realize that how, like, a lot of people use TTRPGs to escape, but also people use it to explore topics that they wouldn't ordinarily. And I think being able to communicate around that is just more important now than ever. And the fact that it's being normalized is so huge. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we even talked about it a little bit before the show started, that my main falling out with D&D was that lack of communication with my group specifically. Not even necessarily the game at fault, but some of those being able to talk to your group is kind of like what made me fall out of that community.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm someone who plays D&D 5e with my college friends, but it's one of those games that I don't think I'd really play with anyone that I don't think I'd play with anyone that I wasn't already super close with, because and I'm not going to get it super in deep about this because I don't want to have people who play D&D yell at me, but I don't think that D&D is fully equipped with the tools that internally to deal with a lot of these topics. A lot of them have to be brought in externally. And that's not necessarily a knock against D&D, that's just how the game is written.
No, it's been that way. I think D&D came out, 5e specifically came out in 2014.
I think so, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
sounds of googling
in 2012.
2012.
Yeah, there's the googling noise from both of us. All right. Well, let's move away from Sweet Pea today because I knew we were going to talk the most about it because I really like that game. Let's talk about Taking Your Friends' Coins, which is your most recent release. Yeah, tone shift and a half here. What's Taking Your Friends' Coins?
So this is one of those fun things. This is probably one of my favorite things about games and game jams is that games can come from anywhere. Anywhere. Someone had posted a game jam for Pleasure Not Business Card RPG Jam is what it was called. And the whole point was write an entire RPG, but it has to be written on the size of a business card. You have to be able to, you would have to be able to hand someone this on the size of a business card, and they should be able to play the entire game.
I remember
that was the
this.
whole and I was like, none of my other friends were doing this. I don't think I know anyone else that submitted to this, but I was just like, I had nothing to do at work that day. I was really bored. I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to putz around with an idea. And I'm like, hey, you know what? I can fit it on a business card. Let's do it. I didn't play test it. I um, didn't run it past anyone. I just I edited the entire thing, I think, in Google Slides, so that way I could have
Wow.
the specific size, like how I needed it. And it's so the way and I'll read the game because the whole game is the size of a business card. The intro is an unbalanced coin game about taking your friends' coins. It's for 2 to 5 players, and really all you have to do is everyone starts with 5 coins. You flip your coins. Your heads equals 1 point, tails equals 2 points. Add up all your points. Person with the highest number of points wins the round and takes one of everyone's coins. A tie results in a redo of the round. Everyone flips again with the same rules. The game ends when one person has everyone's coins. It was not meant to be balanced. It was not meant to be fair. Because once you win once, you have even if you're just playing with 2 people. Now you're 6-4. You're almost guaranteed to have more points in them. But you know what? It all fit on a single business card, and that's all that mattered. So it's one of those games that I released. I wrote the game, I think, and made it and formatted it and published it in 3 hours. It was fun, it was goofy, but it's not the game I've really spent a lot of time thinking about, I'll be honest with you.
When I heard about this, I was like, the perfect time to play this game is when you and your friends have sat down at a restaurant and you are waiting for your food to come.
Yes, exactly. You just pull this out of your pocket and be like, let's go.
Not much more to deep dive on taking your friends' coins.
Go, look, if you want a deep dive on it, I'm curious to see where this goes. So if you have more questions about it, please, by all means.
Well, then we're going to move on then. Now, you shared with me a little bit earlier that you're actually working on another game right now, hoping to have it out in the near future, called Everything Must Go. It's about garage sales and the things that people sell. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how this game is, or what this game is, and how it works a little?
Yeah, so what's really great is that I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but this came across in one of the. This is one thing that came across when someone said something random in a server I'm in. Someone just said, let me see if I can actually find this specific thing. Yeah, there was a Tumblr post that a friend shared in a Discord server that was a picture of a cat, which says, and then they had a little sign, a cardboard sign attached to them. It says, "Garage sale, follow me." And I was like, oh, this gave me an idea for a game. And for me, I was just like, I would like to tell a garage sale game where you just give little backstories about the items from the garage sale. And this is one of those things where I had this little nugget of idea, and I sat on it for I think a full day, just being like, I should write a game about this. I should write a game about this. I should write a game about this. And I sat down and I just slammed out some basic touch points of what I wanted the game to be about. And ultimately, what I settled on is I wanted it to be another 2-player game. I love any kind of player games, but 2-player games are my specialties for writing. I really like how personal they are and how they get.
Yeah.
And I find them the easiest to write personally. But what I wanted this to be is just figuring out who's doing the garage sale, why are they having the garage sale, what are they selling, what's the attachment they had to these items, and who's buying these items. So I actually was hugely inspired by Adela's Hedge Witch Tales for this, which Hedge Witch Tales, the main premise for the mechanics of the game is you have one static character and you have multiple kind of rolling characters that come and go, and it's still a 2-player game. So you'll have one person is the hedge witch in that game, and then you have the different wanderers that come by needing help. And so I modeled my game specifically after that. I had you, there's a rollable table for creating a cellar with a lot of different adjectives to give you an idea for what this kind of person is. I also made it so some of the adjectives conflict. So you could roll and you could have someone be old and young. And you're like, that doesn't make sense. And so you can have two sellers. One is old, one is young. Like, there's flexibility in creation.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to explore, hey, why are they having the garage sale? Where are they having it? What's the mood of the sale? Because like there's a lot of different reasons if you think about people have a garage sale. Sometimes people are like, you know what? I got a bunch of junk and I just need to get rid of it. Let's do it. So it's like, oh, I
Yep.
guess I got to do this. There's people that are like, I need the money. Like, I need to sell this. I need money. I need to pay off loans, whatever. And then there's stuff like sad where it's just like, hey, my relative passed away and I need to clear out their house. So there's a lot of different emotions that go into garage sales that can impact not just the person, but the whole mood of the sale. And then I wanted to kind of go into who's visiting. What are they interested in? And this is where I kind of go into I blend it a little bit from Sweet Peony as well, where once a person you roll on a table for picking a trinket or an item, you work together to collaborate on what the item is. You answer some questions about like what the item is and so on, but then you kind of tell a vignette of a memory that the seller has of this item. It can be happy or sad, whichever you want, like whatever you frame you want to have with it. And then once they tell, and you kind of frame it as them telling a story about the item to the person who's buying it. The buyer is then going to kind of respond with their own memory that kind of like relates to the memory of the buyer. So it's a lot about how people relate to each other as well. And then it wraps up by either do they buy the item? If they do, why do they buy it? So on and so forth. And so for me, I wanted to have this very nice gameplay loop of you have the garage sale laid out. We're going to create an item. We're going to tell a story. The person's going to reciprocate. Do they buy or do they leave? Roll for another buyer coming up to the sale. And then just go through that gameplay loop. And then at the end, you just kind of figure out answer some questions. How'd the garage sale go? Do we zoom and then we zoom in on the different people, how they're using the items they purchased.
So, correct me if I'm wrong here, Adam, but you
Mm-hmm.
really like games that explore emotion and relationships.
I do a lot. And for me, it's really stems from the fact that some of my favorite things about games is how invested you get in them. Whenever you
Yeah.
make a game, you make a character, you make a world, you get invested, you're putting some of yourself into it. And you often then have a range of different emotions you feel while playing those games. And one of the things I really enjoy is when you have to zoom in on a specific emotion. It's one thing for me, which is really exciting when it stuff just comes up, just you play to find out and you figure things out. But to be able to focus in on how people relate, how are you feeling, it kind of causes you to pause and actually just parse through who this person is, this character is, and it adds a layer of depth that I just really love seeing in games. And it really just also helps me. So one thing, so I have ADHD. I was diagnosed when I was young, and it's one of the things I'm very open and public about. I love answering questions about it. I love learning more
Yeah.
about it. And for me, I, especially when I was younger, I often very much struggled to express how I was feeling. I'd be angry. I didn't know why I was angry, but I was angry. Or I'd be upset. I didn't know why I was upset. I had really bad emotional dysregulation. And now that I'm older and I've learned a lot more about this, for me to be able to zoom in on a single emotion, explore it, communicate about it is also really rewarding for me. And I'm really glad whenever I can make it rewarding for other people as well.
I think looking at these games, you kind of see that evolution where you go through them. You start off with Poltergeist, which I think was just you kind of stretching your writing muscles. It really seems like that.
Mm-hmm.
You were kind of exploring it. Then Sweet Peony came out, and this is like comparatively much bigger project. You explore that emotion of joy and sorrow, taking your friends' coins. You, as a group, do a game where you all get angry except for one person. Everything Must Go is a little bit more complicated than the other ones. So I think that exploring even right down to your roots there, why are you having the garage sale is such a big question. But then there's so much more because we do have these emotional attachments to items around us.
Mhm.
I think it's just it shows growth in you as a game designer.
Yeah, thank you, and I appreciate that. And I think another thing for me is that I'm not like a huge hoarder, but I definitely form attachments to items, and
Mm-hmm.
and then also like if you can tell, Pixar is a big influence on my childhood as well. You think about
Yeah,
movies like
yeah,
Toy Story as well, like, but like no, but for real though, it's just it's emotions exist everywhere we go. They define who
yeah.
we are as people, and it's just so interesting seeing where and how we apply those emotions. And I'm sure the next game I write is either going to be some really short game, kind of like taking your friend's coins, or it's going to be even more complicated than this one. Well, we might either be wibbling or we're skyrocketing. I don't know yet.
I think something that's really cool about your games too, and I mentioned this to Emily as well, is that there's a lot of inspiration that comes from game jams. And what is it about game jams that gets you going?
So for me, it's like I I ultimately I'm a hobbyist game writer. I
Yeah.
don't like for me writing a game is not about I need to negate this. I need this to get a lot of traffic. I need to sell. I need to drive business. For me, I write a game when I feel like writing a game. I have a couple drafts of game ideas that I've had that just like haven't gone anywhere, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. So I need to actually like have something to latch on and have an inspiration to get me to sit my butt down and actually write out a game. And so for having a game jam to be able to have a dedicated topic, I can actually go, okay, I'm not just thinking about games as a whole. I'm specifically thinking about games that have to fit into this niche of like the game jam. And even then it comes from like, okay, these people are talking about this game. Oh, someone said a single word, got me going. Just we're good, off to the races. It's really just a lot about being able to get me inspired as well as filter all of the different possibilities. I don't have to write about a game out anything. I have to write a game that fits under these parameters. I think that's why ultimately that's most evident in taking your friend's coins, where it was such a silly little idea for a game that I only ever would have thought of for that game jam because it's just such a unique. Can you write a game that fits on a business card? So yeah, it's like similar to how sometimes I just see something and it goes, that makes me think of a game. It's being able to have that inspiration. It gives me like a step up that goes from that actually gets me into writing a game mode.
I think that makes perfect sense. Just looking at their stuff, I have not shy about admitting that another reason why I started Scheduled for Launch was my sheer frustration about a game I was trying to make not working. So I think that yeah, just having that inspiration and that the community specifically that happens with
Mm-hmm.
game jams, kind of talking that out, that makes a lot of sense. I haven't seen any game jams up for a little while actually, so I'm excited for the next big one.
I'm sure we'll have a summer one maybe. I'll talk to Weston. Weston's been responsible. You can thank Weston. Weston's been responsible for two of my games that I've actively written. So
Actually, looking at it, is Everything Must Go. Is that your first non-game jam game?
it is my first non-game jam game, actually. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
When you put it like that, yeah, it sure is.
Well, congratulations on that. It was a little cat that
Thank you.
helped you this time.
There you go. Yes, thank you, Garage Sale Cat. I appreciate it.
Adam, we're starting to run low on time, but I got two more questions for you.
Yeah.
One I love to ask, it's at the end of basically every single episode, but can you give some advice to somebody out there who wants to make their own game, but they don't know where to start?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to give the same advice that I give to people with ADHD, which is I found from someone on TikTok, which is just follow the dopamine. Like you've just got to think
Okay.
about you don't want to you got to think about what makes you happy and like or what you're interested in or what catches your attention. If you just sit down and go, I'm going to write a game, or I am going to make myself write a game about this thing, you could possibly do it, but it's going to be a lot harder to kind of sink your teeth into. But if you think about something that makes you happy or excited or is like really interesting to you, follow that. Go wherever that takes you. If you have a really cool game idea, but you're like, I'm not sure how to implement it, but it would be really cool, start writing it. Like, it might not turn out exactly how you initially thought about it, but if it's what's interesting to you, that's going to give you more success than trying to force something to fit into something you're not interested in.
That's such good advice. I think that's the first time we've had that advice. We get a lot of doubling up on advice in Schedule for Launch. And a lot of the times it's because that's really good advice. But I don't think we've ever had that advice. And that's really good advice.
Good, I'm glad.
Adam, before we go, where can people find out more about you and your stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can follow me on Twitter at Hawk Windrider, HAWK WINDRIDER. You can also find me and my games on itch.io. That's going to be hawk-windrider.itch.io. Those are really the main places that people can reach me. And what I always say is if anyone has any questions, my DMs on Twitter are always open. Feel free to reach out anytime with questions about games, ADHD, you just want to nerd out about stuff. Cool, I love making friends.
As always, audience, those links are going to be down in the description below. Adam, thank you so much for joining me this week. It was a ton of fun.
Yeah, it was an absolute pleasure. It's great talking to you. I almost am a little sad the audience isn't going to hear the 40 minutes of conversation we had before the podcast.
Y'all didn't miss much. We talked about Curse of Strahd.
Thanks a lot, Zach. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. It was great. All right, audience. Well, thank you for listening. Adam and all of his projects, they're available, and Everything Must Go, that's going to be available soon too. They're getting ready to launch that. Like, he's getting ready to launch that. So be excited about Everything Must Go. Go check out his other games, and yeah, get set. Take care of yourselves. Have a great night. I'll see you on the next one. Bye. Thank you so much to Adam for joining me on the podcast this week. Adam's games are absolutely amazing, especially if you don't have a lot of time to commit to playing games. These games are short, they're sweet, they're great for a laugh. I actually took some time at lunch and played Taking Your Friend's Coins with a couple colleagues, and we had a really good time with it. So go out there, make sure you check out his work, buy it on itch. I'm sure he'd really appreciate it. And thank you for listening, audience. Things have been a little hectic around here. Now that the move is done and my studio's set up more or less, I can ideally get back on track and start reaching out to some more creators and get them on here. We are skyrocketing really close to the next milestone on listeners for the podcast and have had some amazing consistency with listeners. So thank you for that. If you like this episode and you want to hear more, why not leave a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify? Or even better yet, tell a friend. Word of mouth is the best way that I can advertise this show, and all of you have made it so incredibly. Just thank you. You're spreading the word in a really good way, and I really appreciate it. There won't be an episode next week. Unfortunately, things fell through with one of the creators who I was supposed to talk to, and I just wasn't able to get anybody to fill in. I don't actually have any interviews set up right now, so if you want to come and talk about your game, please reach out. Now is the perfect time to come and get onto the show. It's really easy to come on, I promise. I do most of the work for you. Just don't be a shitty person and I'll get you on. Until then, take care of yourselves. Have a good night. I'll see you next time. Bye.